Dwellers in Darkness, Chapter 1. Toa tightened his headlock on the Tatarak and tried to wrestle the beast to the ground. Bumanga's mask of growth allowed him to reach almost the size of the creature, but he could not match the Tatarak in sheer strength. Still, he knew a few things about the leverage and pressure points that the Rahi did not. With a roar, the Tatarak lost its footing and slammed hard into the ground of Zia. What was left of the island city trembled beneath the impact. "Now stay down," Bumanga growled, even as Toa Pooks used his power to create new bonds of solid stone for the monster. After a long battle, the Tatarak battered the Kanohi dragon enough that the Toa Norik spinners had been able to slow it down, while Kualis' ice attacks finished it off. It now lay unconscious, sprawled across much of the southern district of the city. Toa Iruni had taken advice from a vortex and made sure to move the creature's leg away from the mountain so it wouldn't end up with a big snack for that hungry landmark. Only Toagaki stood on the side, her eyes fixed on the ocean but unseeing. The Toahaga had seen her like this before. She had focused inward, using her power of her mask of surveillance to see things that they could not. Now she stiffened, cried out, and turned toward the others. "They're coming," she said. "Hundreds of them." "Hundreds of who?" asked Iruni. He considered Gaki a good friend, but her vague predictions did have a way of getting on his nerves at times. "Seekers of shadows," Gaki muttered. "Slayers of the dark, ready for war. Vortex cannot stand." Norik walked in beside her and gently eased Gaki to a seat on the rock. He knelt in front of her and talked to her in a whisper. Now she could nod her head. After a few minutes, he gestured to Kualis. Although the Toa of Ice was no longer a Rahaga, he had lost his bond with the Flying Rahi, or his ability to communicate with them, and he signaled to a smoke hawk up above and spoke rapidly in a language none of them understood. A moment later, the hawk flew off to the west. "How is she?" Pooks asked Norik. It's been a long time since she used her power," asked the Toahaga fire. "Or rather, since it used her. It's never easy." What you said, Secrets of Shadows. What do you think it means?" Isn't it obvious?" asked Bumanga, shrinking down to his normal height. "Seekers of shadows. Dark hunters." As the smoke hawk picked up on the moment returned, flying in tight circles around the island and cawing loudly. Kualis nodded twice and rushed over to his fellow Toa. Bumanga is right from the sound of it," he said. "My winged ally sees ships coming, so many that they blot out the waves, and the crews are armed, my friend. It's a battle fleet." Iruni had climbed to the top of one of the few spires standing in the city. "You score one for Birdie," he yelled down, "and with company I'm going to check them out." "Iruni, wait!" asked Norik. Wait for what?" the Toa said, smiling. "I spent thousands of years as a Rahaga. Now I'm back in action, and I love it." An instant later, the Toa used his mask of quick travel to teleport from a spire to a flagship of the oncoming fleet. He found himself standing on the deck of two powerful-looking figures. A handful of armored warriors immediately moved down to surround him. "Who are you?" asked Iruni. "What's your business in these waters?" "My business?" asked one of the figures. "My business is profit, and that profit has been strangled for too long. And who are you?" "I am Toa Iruni. My friends have just completed a mission on Vortex. That island was half leveled in the process, and let me guess, you're here to level the other half." My name is the Shadowed One," came the reply, "leader of the Dark Hunters. Standing beside me is my loyal Lieutenant Asian. Standing in front of me is a foolish Toa if he thinks he can get between me and my goal." Iruni ignored the jab. If you're looking to loot Zia, there's precious little left to steal." "Loot?" replied the Shadowed One in mock surprise. "Steal? How little do you think you know of me? Would I muster a fleet to petty thievery? No. Toa, I have made a bargain this day with the power I never knew existed, and my new allies have asked me to ensure that Zia provides no more weapons to the enemy. They wished me to blockade or occupy the island, but I do not believe in half measures. The child one smiled, an expression as cold as the one of Koalas' ice blast. So I am going to destroy Zia and every last living thing on it, and if your friends are unfortunate enough to be there when I arrive, well, perhaps I will be more merciful, and leave enough of them to bury. Iruni raised his cyclone spear. Weapons were suddenly aimed in a dozen different directions. This is my war, the Shadow One said softly, and welcome to it. To be continued. Dwellers in Darkness, Chapter 2. At times like this, Iruni looked fondly at his days as a Rahaga. It wasn't so bad, being as short and twisted and spending all your life chasing after the Bracas monkeys. At least you didn't have to stand on rolling decks staring at a crazed leader of the Dark Hunters as he prepared to slaughter an entire island full of, well, not so innocent vortex. You know I can't let you do this, Toa Iruni said. And I know you can't stop me, the Shadow Lord replied, smiling. My new partner suggests I occupy Zia, but I must have misheard. I could have sworn she said destroy. Iruni was about to make a smart comeback when the seas started to churn and heave. In the next moment, a tidal wave big enough to swamp the entire Dark Hunter fleet rose from the ocean depths toward hundreds of feet in the air, just stayed there, looming over the ships with a shadow of doom. Is that enough water to clean out your ears? Iruni turned. Standing on the bow of the ship was a Toa of water he did not recognize, carrying a spiked mace and a shield. She was flanked by a warrior in golden armor and a four-armed giant with two long horns coming out of his head. And he was alone and was heavy enough to almost swamp the ship. He carried a multi-bladed axe and a small object covered in a cloth. The female Toa stepped down to the deck and marched up to the Shadow One. Although he was taller than she, her bearing made her seem to dominate everyone else on board. I hired the Dark Hunters for a simple task, she said. Her voice was quiet as a dying breath. If you can't do it. She held the mace aloft. The tidal wave suddenly rushed forward to the ships, almost colliding with the flagship, as it stopped up dead again as she lowered the weapon. Now, I'll find someone who can, she finished. Iruni looked from the Toa to the obviously concerned Shadow One, and then back again. Nice, he said. And what do you do for an encore? The Toa nodded, and the golden warrior vanished. She reappeared an instant later with the other 5 Toa Haga in a tow. They arrived to see the Shadow One in intense and whispered the conversation to the Toa of water. It ended with the Toa blasted 3 nearby Dark Hunters into the sea as casually as someone else might swat a gnat. Then she turned to the assembled Toa Haga. Ah, good, she said. I have a mission for the 6 of you. Wait a minute, snapped Nork. Who are you? What's going on here? And we don't make requests for anybody wearing a mask, said Koalas. Then he turned to Nork and added, do we? Nork shook his head. My name is Hellrex, said the Toa of Water. I run an organization you've never heard of before called the Order of Montanui. We are not war, and you've just been drafted. And if we say no, said Toa Bumanga. Hellrex gave a slight smile. Her eyes darted toward the ocean to the starboard side, where the 3 Dark Hunters were desperately trying to tread water. Then he looked back at the Toa Haga. Yes, you don't take requests, I understand. Good thing I'm not making one. And what do you want us to do? Asked Toa Pook, seeing Iruni's glare. He said, well, it doesn't hurt to ask. Hellrex took a few steps closer and lowered her voice so the Dark Hunters could not overhear. We are mounting an attack on the Brotherhood of Makuta, but their leader eludes us. Our best information is that we have last known the inside of a Maximus robot near Mahari Nui, but we might not have gone into since then is unknown. We need Makuta Pterodax found. Why us? Asked Iruni. You fought him before. You've beaten him before, Helrix replied. And all we remember is, well, that turned out, and muttered Iruni. Helrix ignored him. If I am right, Pterodax has gone somewhere that no one else has dared to venture. Left free, he could do untold damage. And just how are we supposed to take him down? Asked Bumanga. Knock him off the doors of Destral and ask him to come out and play? Helrix chuckled. There might not be doors left to knock open soon, but another story. If you have a glide, someone who has generously offered to do work for you in exchange for his freedom. The four-armed giant took a step forward. And at first they thought Helrix met him before, but instead he took the cloth off the object he carried. With that, he revealed a globe filled with water and something else. It looked like a green sea snake with hate-filled crimson eyes. His name is Zaktan, and said Helrix. He is not as friendly as he looks. If he acts up, just haul him out of the tank and let him gasp for air a few times. That's what I always do. And now I think it's time you got started. The Haga looked at each other, one by one. Each of them nodded, all except for Gaki. She was backing away, shaking her head and hands to the sides of her mask. Death, she whispered. All around we are going into a place of death, and one of us will not return. To be continued. Dwellers in Darkness, Chapter 3. Toa Iruni dove for cover, but barely dodging Toa Huki's chain. Not far away, Norik was locked in a stalemate with Jaller, while Bumunga was having a hard time even finding the stealthy Nuparu. All in all, although it was not one of the Toa Haga's better days, they all hoped to return to Metro Nui, the city that helped save them from when they were a Wahaga. Would soon be a joyous one. Instead, they were all here on a mission from a shadowy organization called the Order of Matanui. Their goal, track down the missing Makuta Pterodax before he could execute the final stages of his plan. Unfortunately, that was not as easy as it sounded, and it didn't sound that easy. They had been saddled with a mutated Paraka, Zaktan, that had to carry out in a water-filled sphere. The information that Pterodax would be heading to an inaccessible zone in the Metro Nui Coliseum. As anti-dermist, he could slip through cracks too small for even Norik to make his way through with his mask of dishment. The only way to follow him would be to shatter the foundation of the Coliseum, which would bring the structure down. Needless to say, popping and saying we're going to wreck an important building had not been the joy of the Toa Mahari. Given Takanu's recently unexplained disappearance, they were on the edge to start with. Just set them off. Huki swung his chain again. This time Iruni grabbed it in midair and yanked the Toa of stone forward. At this last moment, Iruni sidestepped, letting his opponent slam into the rock wall. Stone meets stone, muttered Iruni. Now will you listen? Toa Qualis had teamed up with Bumunga in an effort to pin down Nubaru, whose mask of stealth made him almost impossible to spot. A hastily recreated snowstorm revealed the Toa Mahari of Earth, but finding him and stopping him were two different things. Being 60 feet in height just made Bumunga an easier target, and a barricade of earth kept him off balance. Qualis frowned. He remembered these Mahari when they were Matoran villagers. He understood their suspicion and hostility, given the circumstances, but if this kept up, someone was going to get hurt. They called for drastic measures. Summoning the power of his mask of control, he touched the blind mass of Rahi dwelling in the archives not far below. In response, a huge claw crashed his way through the pavement and grabbed Nuparu. Let him go! Shouted Toa Hali, blasting Qualis with a powerful jet of water. Even as he struggled to the impact, Qualis realized that what was about to happen. The creature had not been roused by his mask of power, but his concentration was now broken. The raw heat was no longer under his control. It erupted below the ground, shattering the earth and rock well over 60 feet high. It scanned the battlefield with its 3 heads. Muted light from the sun holes reflected off of its brown scales and its bat-like wings. Its cry of triumph shattered the crystal structures away as Kometru. The word Toa means hero in Matoran, and one of the characteristics of a hero is the ability to put aside personal feelings in the crisis. Thus, it was the Mahari and the Haga forgot their fight in the face of monstrosity from below. Still reeling from Hali's blow, Koalas could not reassess her control, but Jaller and Norik had already discovered the beast that he feared fire, and the twin blast drove it back towards the barren plains of Pometru. The creature wasn't about to go quietly. It hurled Nupuru from the sky at a deadly speed. Huki whirled, using his mask of gravity as he never had before, applying just enough power to slow the whole of Earth without ripping him apart. Bumanga, still at his maximum size, landed at rainbows on the Rahi. He might as well have been in a toa of water, summoning in the light spring rain, and the good it did. And now it was Kongu and Iruni's turn. They combined their air power and the powers of the toa of fire to create a swirling tornado of flame. The Rahi was directly in the eye of the storm, which was so hot that it melted the nearby mountains into slag. It roared and attempted to fly out of the trap, but its wings were already blazing. Finally, overcome by the heat, it toppled over. The impact shook the ground for Kaios around. 11 wary toa stood by the unconscious beast. Already, the Anu Matoran would be on the way to help prepare the creature for its return to the archives. Pometru was a disaster area. The ground was scorched and burned. Not far away, Pomatoran neighbored about fires in their village. It was aided by Hali and Gaki. Only the fact that the area was of the Metru was sparsely populated had kept this from being a true cataclysm. Norik glanced at Jaller. "We either need to stop fighting," he said, "or find some place uninhabited to settle things. Otherwise, the Matoran are going to get killed, and neither of us wants that." "What do you think will happen if you destroy the Colosseum?" said Jaller. "We are not trying to hurt anyone," said Pooks. "We just want to save them." "Yes, we're all idiots," added Iruni, "but we have a dozen toa here. We should be able to figure out what to do while keeping buildings intact." "Just what is it you have to do? Why are you here?" said Jaller. "Listen to me," said Norik. "The Toa Nuva are in the core of the universe right now, fighting for the Great Spirit. But in true mysteries, the true secrets, all the hidden knowledge about the cosmos its workings aren't there. They are somewhere beneath your feet, and there is in a place no Toa, Matoran, or Turaga have ever been. And right now, we have to think Makuta has reached that place, and if we're right, it may already be too late for us all." It took hours of planning to convince the Turaga the Toa hadn't lost their minds, and another half of the day on top of that to complete the work needed. When they were ready, Jaller, Norik, Pooks, and Nupuru used their powers to crack the foundation and create a tunnel where none of them have gone before. Outside, Huki's gravity power, her Koalas' ice power, and Mumunga's vast strength struggled to keep the building intact. Once the tunnel was in place, Hali and Gaki used their water powers to cool down the walls. Iruni and Kongu watched as Zaktan, with Kongu more than ready to send Paraka's last case hurtling toward the air at the first word. The hardest part came at last. Bumunga and Koalas had to let go of the Colosseum to join the others as they were prepared to venture into the unknown. That left Huki supporting the vast structure alone. My team will go with you, said Jowler to Norik. No, the leader of the Toahaga responded. If we fail, if Teriax escapes, you may be the last hope of stopping him. And we will go, and Pooks and I will seal the tunnel behind us. Hurry, Huki cannot last long. Jowler wanted to argue, but Norik was right. The Toa of stone was on the verge of collapse, and he watched as the Toahaga disappeared into the ground below. A moment later, the powers of stone fire resealed the entrance and signaled to Huki, who slowly eased back his mask of power to lower the Colosseum back onto the ground. Then the Toa of stone passed out. He'll be all right, said Holly, after checking on their fallen friend. But I still think we should have gone along. They might be facing danger. I know, said the Toa of Fire. I keep thinking as I watch Pooks and Norik closing the tunnel behind them, I have never seen anyone seal their own tomb before. To be continued. Dwellers in Darkness, Chapter 4. The 5 Toa Mahari stood in a semicircle, staring at the base of the Colosseum. A few moments before, the Toahaga had vanished down to the tunnel of the Foundation, heading for Armata knew what. Now it seems that there was nothing for the Mahari to do but wait. What do you think they'll find down there? Asked Nubaru. Pipes, said Huki dismissively. Dirt, stone, rafts, maybe an underground stream or two. There's nothing down there. How can you be so sure? Asked Jowler. Only Watoran have been all beneath the city, Huki replied. If there was something down there, they would have found it by now. Maybe, said Nubaru, sounding not at all convinced. Let's go, said Holly. We're not accomplishing anything by standing here. The Toa Mahari of Water turned back to head to Ga-Metru. There she saw the golden crystal floating in the air. She reached out to touch it and moved away from her. What is this? She asked. Something you need. The Toa Mahari spun around to see an Iban-armored female standing right behind them. For a second, they thought she was a vortex, but a closer look revealed her among to be a species they have never seen before. She carried a shield, but no weapon, and that they could see. They call it the heart of the Viscerac, the figure continued. It's inactive now, the power grows. Wherever it is, the Viscerac will come, traveling from anywhere in the known universe to find it. You, Toa, must take it to the island of Artidax and plant it there. Draw the Viscerac to the place where they can be imprisoned forever. Right, said Jowler, and who guards Metru Nui while we're gone? You? Oh, it will be protected, never fear, said the woman. She produced a small stone tablet bearing a map to the island that I had handed over. Now you must take it take the heart and go, before the Viscerac descends into the city and search for it. Now go. Before the Toa could question her further, the armored woman's body shattered into a million crystal fragments. The fragments scattered in the breeze. In moments they were gone. Well, that's weird, said Kongu. Oh, so what do we do? Asked Nubaru. Oh, if she is telling the truth, the city isn't ready for another full-scale infestation. It's a big if, said Jowler. So Kongu, Huki, you stay here. Holly, Nubaru, and I will go to this Artidax place. The 3 Toa Mahari departed by ship within an hour. Kongu and Huki watched over them and go. Then they spent some time agreeing on how to split up their patrols to the city. Once that was done, they started back to the Colosseum. Neither one noticed a cloud of crystals, little shards pulsating behind them. They turned into a form of their mysterious visitor, and once her shield struck them, they knew it knocked them both unconscious, as they never noticed anything at all. The trip to Artidax was long but uneventful. Nibiru kept a careful lookout for Visorak, but saw none in the past few days. As they got closer to the island, they would catch a glimpse of the spires on the shores of the island they passed, and if the visitor was correct, the entire horde would be in the pursuit of them now. The first thing Jowler noticed when they reached the island was a set of recent tracks. A number of older ones would have been partially obscured by the actions of wind and tide, but these looked like they had been just made. Nearby was various bits of wood floated in the water, apparently a wreckage of a ship or boat. "Well, someone's been here," he said, and still is. The voice belonged to a tall, blue-bibbed, monstrous appearance, wearing a water-filled helmet on his head. He held a crude stone dagger in his hand. "Tacadox," said Jowler in surprise, and his team fought Tacadox along with the other Baraki in the pit. "How did you escape? Where are all your friends? Talk, you miserable insect." "I escaped, as you put it, and out of the desire to do my bit for Motunui," Tacadox answered with a cold smile. "As for my fellow former rulers, they're no doubt rotting in cells by now, where they belong. But what brings you to this garden spot in the universe?" "They do," asked Nibiru, pointing out to the ocean. They had become the Sea of Bagarak, staggering across the water's surface, heading towards the island behind them, all floating on pieces of flotsam and jetsam of all types. There were thousands of more Visorak. All of them were coming right now for Artidax. They're after us," Jowler said to Tacadox. "But don't worry, we won't be staying long. Of course, they will be." The entire horde?" said Tacadox. You're carrying the heart of the Visorak. I've heard of it, though I've never seen it, of course, and you're leading them here. It explains a great deal." "Well, talk straight, Tacadox," said Holly, "or we'll leave you here as company for the spiders." "Not a bad idea," said Tacadox, summoning all of his willpower. He focused his gaze on Holly, then on Jowler. When Nibiru tried to shield his eyes, his two allies grabbed him and forced him to meet Tacadox's stare. In moments, all three were in a hypnotic trance. "That's more like it," said the Baraki. "A short time ago, two strange beings appeared on the beach in a flash of light. They did not notice me. Of course, I chose to follow and watch them as I saw them mounted on a stone on the largest volcano in the island. And even I could tell them what it was for. They were planning to trigger an eruption, and when it happens, this island and everything on it will be ashes." They disappeared as quickly as they came, leaving me with no way of escape from the disaster until you arrived. And now I will take your boat and leave this rock again. And again, while you three stand here are nice and still, waiting to the end. If you're lucky, very lucky, if that volcano will explode before the Visorak get their pincers on you." Chuckling, Tacadox climbed aboard the Toa's boat, raising the anchor and adjusting the sail. He started moving away from the coastline of Artidax. Behind him, the three Toa Mahari stood like statues, helpless to stop his departure. As Tacadox's ship vanished over the horizon and the volcano moved closer and closer to the eruption, as the first Visorak set their claws on the sands of the island. To be continued. Dwellers in Darkness, Chapter 5. Toa Norik moved more carefully through a narrow passage below the Colosseum of Motunui. Behind him, the other Toa Haga walked single file, eyes and ears alert from any threat. All of them knew that they were in uncharted territory, going somewhere no Toa, Matoran, Turaga, or other intelligent native of this universe have ever gone before. Well, that was not completely true. If what the Order of Motunui suspected was true, Makuta Teradak had traveled this route not long ago. Of course, the information came from an evil Paraka, Zaktan, who was now traveling with the Toa Haga. his recent mutation into a sea creature meant Zayton had to be carried by koalas in a water-filled globe. That reminds me of the archives, Toruni whispered. After a pause, he added, I always pretty much hated that place too. You have to admit, though, Pterodax fits in right here, said Pooks. Dark, dank, and kind of the place where a stone rat could love. We are not looking for a new home, snapped Nork. Focus on the job. Um, that fight among yourselves, his Zoctan and Utoa are all mewing idiots. Well, not all like, Koalas chuckled. Well, I am one of the much more clumsier than average Toa. In fact, I feel your globe is slipping from my fingers even as we speak. Certainly, I hope I don't drop it. And Zoctan cursed. Koalas responded again by dropping the globe for an instant and then catching it again. Whoops, there I go again, said the Toa. Up ahead, Nork he came to a stop. Abusing a small portion of his flame power, he was illuminating one of the walls of the tunnel. On it was a series of inscriptions, apparently very ancient in its origin. Is that Matorn? Doesn't look like it, said Nork. I don't recognize the language. Let me see, said Bumunga, being something of a master underground. Bumunga had seen more of his shade of his own expressions. It's not Matorn, I don't think. It's some kind of root language. I can make out a little bit, not much. And it was some kind of record. But a record of what? Asked Gaki. Bumunga stared at the writing before answering. I can't tell. All I can make out is the name. I'm not sure if it's a person or a place. Barra Magna. No one said anything as they searched out their memories of that name. After a few moments, all of them realized they had never heard that before. It was somewhere in the Matoran universe they all knew. Then it must have been all an unexplored region. And does anything about how to stuff a Makuta into his armor and then flush it away? Asked Aruni. I wish, muttered Bumunga. All right, let's keep going, said Nork. Zoctan, how much further do you think it is? I don't know, snapped the Paraka. I haven't been there either. I just know that's the inscriptions. I read and hinted that it was where the Makuta had come from. I'm not sure if he even knew what was down here or that here actually existed. I think he was guessing. And nothing worse than a Makuta was a good guesser, mumbled Iruni. I expected this trip to be more dangerous, said Pooks, from the way Gaki was talking as we left about how being a place of death and all that. I expected loads of traps and nasty rahi. So far, this is a stroll through Metro Nui. The tunnel suddenly filled with a low hum, which had grown louder by the moment. Too late, Iruni cried out. Out! Everybody out! The next instant he was slammed against the wall and followed by the other Toa Hage. It was only by a sheer luck that Koalas was able to twist his body so that Zoctan's globe did not get smashed into pieces by the impact. Now all 6 Toa Hage trapped pinned to the wall as a powerful magnetic force. Nork immediately called on his power of fire, but the tunnel was fireproof. Each of the others tried their powers in turn, only to find that the small wall was somehow impervious to their elemental energies. Is Makuta? Asked Iruni. I don't think so. He's not this subtle. Well, I think this is one of those traps that Pooks revealed was messed out on. Well, it could be worse, Koalas. I mean, given time, we could sure figure a way out to get free. Why don't I think about the last time we've been given to Bumunga? Do you smell that? They all did. It was a hot metallic scent that wafted from the tunnel up ahead. They all knew what it was, but Nork was the first to spill it out. It was molten protodermis, he said quietly, and it's headed this way. To be continued. Dwellers in Darkness, Chapter 6. Toa Jowler stood on the beach of Artidax, his body pinned rigid by Takadox's hypnotic trance. Next to him, Holly and Nubaru stood, similarly paralyzed. None of the three were aware of what was going on around them, which was probably for the best. Artidax was about to be the scene of disaster. Its volcano was mere moments away from exploding, raining fire and ash and anything unfortunate enough to be around. Not knowing this, the Toa Mahari brought off the heart of the Visorak here, a beacon that would summon the entire Visorak horde to this spot. The idea had been to strand them here, or what no one knew was that Takadox was hiding on this island, as he was hypnotized the three Toa and stole their ship, intending to make his escape. Worse, the Visorak had arrived, which was even now scuttling across the beach of the Toa Mahari. All in all, not the best day the Toa Mahari ever had. The Visorak, it said they said never forget. The specimens now approaching the Toa Mahari is seen Toa before. 1,000 years or so ago in Metru Nui, it had been a different team, of course, but to Visorak, one Toa looks much like another. They could remember, if dimly, the pain the Toa had caused them, and they could remember the hate. But they will recall the one thing more. The Toa might appear weak, beaten, or defeated, and then suddenly lash out with devastating effectiveness. It wouldn't do to rush up their apparently helpless foes and possibly walk into the trap. So they hung back a bit, cautiously probing to see if the Toa would react. Others began to scout. I mean, if these Toa were really frozen, as they seem to be, something that had been done to them, couldn't that something still be on the island, waiting to do it to the Visorak? Jowler had thought this was very strange, as he wasn't capable of thinking at the moment, but at some tiny part of his consciousness that was still active realized the answer. He thought it was not his. This is no way for a Toa to die. That little spark of awareness was followed by a slightly larger one of recognition. He had heard of that voice before. It belonged to Makuta, although it sounded different when it came from the mouth of the robotic Maximus, as the arrogant one and was the same. The voice continued, paralyzed on the beach, about how to be slain by the Visorak, incarcerated by lava. Is that the stuff that legends are made? I think not. Do not bother looking for me. You do not that you could, in your condition. I am not on Artidax, but somewhere very far away. Still, my powers have increased, and so I can see and speak to you just the same. Jowler. Fakama had so many hopes of you, and look at you now. As a Toa, you make a good statue. Of course, I should object at what you have planned for my Visorak, and you and whoever set the volcano to erupt. And you didn't. You didn't know about that, did you? And it would be such a shame to miss seeing your expression when you find out the truth. Jowler suddenly felt a jolt of pain, and sharp and agonizing, and cut through the fog caused by Takadox's hypnosis. At that moment he awakened, his mind reeling. And someone had been talking to him, but who? What had they said? And what had just happened? There wasn't time to puzzle it out, not with Nubaru and Holly in trances and Visorak now closing in. And with no other choice, Jowler hurled small fireballs at his two partners, just enough to singe them, as he hoped the pain shocked them awake. Hey, snapped Nubaru, what's the idea? Not dying, that's the idea, said Jowler. We need to get off this island. And Holly was already at work, summoning the wall of wire to smash into the oncoming Visorak. Jowler threw up a wall of flame to block those coming from behind, and both Toa and Visorak alike froze from the sound of the rumble and thunder coming from the volcano. Uh-oh, said Nubaru. I think I may not be the lava fan, but you are, Jowler, but but I know enough about volcanoes to know what that sound means. It's going to blow. Mata Nui, whispered Holly. Do you think that is why I was supposed to bring the Visorak here so they could be killed? Something was nagging Jowler, a memory of something that he had heard but couldn't quite put his finger on what. But somehow he knew that he was speaking the truth when he said, "Yes, someone planned this, and I'm not sure if they cared if we got caught in the middle." "Our ship is gone," said Nubaru. Well, a half a dozen Visorak moved on them. A shot from his quartic blaster convinced them to back off. "Then we swim," said Jowler. "To where? The middle of nowhere?" Nubaru pointed out. "Oh, it's a swim, fry, or be on the Visorak." "It's swim, fry, or be on the Visorak's lunch," said Jowler. "Take your pick." "Did I ever tell you how much I love water?" said Nubaru. Triggering on his elemental power, he churned on the ground in front of the Toa, creating a path that temporarily freed the Visorak leading to water. "Go!" yelled Jowler. The three broke into a run and dove for the ocean. Behind them, the Visorak milled, and about the moment confused. Their prey was getting anyway, but the heart of Visorak was here. They had to stay where their heart was, didn't they? Out in the water, the Toa were battling their way through more of the Visorak horde, all headed to inaugurably the island. And Jowler looked on for a moment. And he was tempted to destroy the heart, but that would mean having a horde of Visorak, he and his friends, in the moment. And it's what a Toa should do, he thought. The Toa don't kill, after all, or help someone else do it. But maybe this is a new world, one where you can't trust your friends or your enemies. Maybe we can all do this to try and stay alive. The Toa were still too close to the Artidax volcano when it exploded. Holly grabbed her two friends and pulled them underwater, just as flaming chunks of rock were landing all around them. On the beach, the assembled Visorak found themselves too close to the disaster to escape. The horde which had brought pain and death to so many now reaped the reward for their acts. "Now what?" said Nubaru when the Toa surfaced again. "We're a long way from home." "We'll get there one way or another," said Jowler. "And that's when we're going to have a little talk with a certain black-armored female to get some answers. Or we're going to start a war of our own." To be continued. Dwellers in Darkness, Chapter 7. The Toa Hage had, in their time, gone through some pretty bad days. Finding out that the Makuta they had been chosen to protect was a traitor who intended to harm the Matoran, getting turned into Rahaga by the power of the evil Rudaka, and getting attacked by the Toa Hordika gone bad in Metro Nui. All of those were pretty high up on the bad day scale, but nothing was quite compared to being magnetized to the walls of an underground tunnel while molten protodermis surged toward you, searing death on a handful of seconds away. And that was a class by itself. "Anyone got any great ideas?" asked Aruni. No one answered. "And then how about last words?" The hissing sound of the protodermis as it drew closer suddenly drowned out the sound of a smashing stone and a tearing metal. Rock and dust rained down from above, and the Haga looked up to see a huge hole that had been torn in the tunnel ceiling. Looked down at them through what looked like a giant reptilian creature. And what do we have here?" the being mumbled. "6 Toa and their fish tank in danger." It talks?" said Bumanga. "I don't care if it sings or dances as and can juggle Kanoki blindfolded," said Rooney. "It can get us out of here." The great beast nodded. I will. At least until I find out who you are. If I'm not satisfied with the answer, then I will throw you back." There was a moment where a terrible vertigo and complete disarray. The next thing that the Haga knew was that they were in they were in another part of the tunnel. The beast was with them, though noticeably a smaller size. Also present was the water tank containing Zactan. Now, by the right salvage, I ask, who are you? Who were you before, and why are you here? Said the beast. As swiftly as possible, Norik explained the history of the Toa Haga and their mission of the tunnels. He left out the mention of Toa Hellrex or the Order of Matanui. The beast listened, nodding occasionally, and when he was finished, it smiled. So Makuta saw the need of protection one day in the distant past. How amusing. I am a Makuta as well. My name is Miserix. No doubt that you have heard of me, for which we can thank you for our mutual enemy, Pterodax. Bumunga and Koalas were immediately ready to fight, but Norik gestured them to hold back. Whoever this Miserix was, he had saved them. Not that I'm complaining, mind you, but how did you find us, and how did you save us? Ah, just like a Toa, said Miserix, always assuming that the universe revolves around you. Well, I had no idea that you were here. I was seeking Pterodax. As for how I prevented your premature or melting teleportation, a minor if youthful talent. What makes you think the Pterodax is down here? Asked Toa Pooks. The other new Pooks was just buying time. His mask of analyzing was copying Miserix's power, but that took a while too. I could say I smelled his stench, said Miserix, but the truth is, I found the Makuta who preferred talking to being shredded in my claws. He pointed me in the right direction, and in turn, I did not tear him apart. He was quite intact when I absorbed him into my body. And by the way, Miserix lashed out, knocking Pooks to the wall. The Toa's mask flew off. I dislike being imitated, the Makuta growled. Gaki yelled Pooks to his feet and retrieved his mask from him. So what now? Said the Toa of Water. Now, said Miserix. Now we best Pterodax in his lair. Enough time has been wasted on the pretender to power. Miserix turned and walked away. If he was worried that the Toa Haga would not follow, or that they would attack him from behind, he showed no sign of it. In truth, he was concerned about neither. If they didn't come along, it mattered not a bit to him. If they attacked, he would kill them all. They followed. Well, he's a Makuta, Zactan said in his whisper. Your sworn enemy. Why do you not kill him? You're a Paraka, whispered Pooks. You're also our sworn enemy. Why don't we kill you? Because we need you, Serpent, and we may need him too. After what felt like hours of travel, the tunnel came to a stop. It ended in a mid-sized chamber lined with sophistical machinery, but that wasn't what captured the attention of the Haga. No, they were focused on two main corpses in the room. Qualis was first to check over the still armored forms. Bumunga joined, and after a few moments the Toaverse said, they have been dead for many thousands of years. They look something like Toa. As you can see, one is in red armor, the other in green. And they wear masks as we do, but there's something different. Maybe a lot of things. Miserix extended the claw and scraped off a piece of the armor of the body. He examined it carefully. Fascinating. This armor is not made of protodermis. You would guess it's nothing about them is from their organic tissue or mass. Yes, all things are made of protodermis. If they're not, they could only mean that they're not from around here, finished Nord. But what are they doing here, miles beneath Metro Nui? How did they die? And what about this place? Before Miserix could answer, there was a crackle of ozone. The group turned to see a hole forming behind them. Within the hole, they could see nothing but darkness first. Then vague outline glimpses of figures coming towards them through the void. I believe we have company, said Miserix. Perhaps, Haga, we will get to see how just effective you are protecting a Makuta after all. To be continued. Dwellers in Darkness, Chapter 8. Huki was the first to awaken, Kongu beside him, still unconscious. The Toa of Stone's mind was full of questions. How, where, and why? The how was easily answered. Someone had attacked the two Mahari from behind, and shortly after Jara and his team left the island of Artidax. Who that might have been, he had no idea. He certainly looked forward to meeting them again. Where was easy too. Who they were in the Colosseum in Metro Nui, half expected to wake up locked in a cell, and that wasn't the case. He didn't even see a guard out of the corridor. Their weapons were gone, but they still wore masks. Why? That was what he was about to find out. He gave Kongu a hard rap on the mask. Wake up, stiff breeze, he said. We have work to do. What? Said Kongu, shaking his head. Where are we? Why are you hard hitting me? Huki was already up and his way out the door. Let's find out. He had gone only a few steps out of the corridor when a cloud of black crystalline shards appeared in front of him. It rapidly concealed the form of a black armored female who first told the Mahar they had to go to Artidax. Huki suddenly thought he knew who it had been. So, he said, it was all some kind of trick. If you wish to think of it that way, the figure replied. I am Jomac, the agent of the Order of Montanui. For reasons of its own, the Order wanted the Toa Mahari out of Metro Nui for the time, and we wanted the Visorak taken off the board. Hence, our decision was to kill 2 Gecko for 1 stone. And Kongu was still standing behind Huki now. But if you thought we could all quickly, didn't you? But you thought we could all quickly, didn't you? Jomac nodded. And you didn't step in. We could have saw you interfering. With what? Huki asked. Jomac fragmented again and flew down to the end of the corridor. There was a window here that looked a lot like the southern Metro Nui. As she reformed, she said, with this. Huki and Kongu looked out at their city, stunned. It was no longer looked like the place they had been living for weeks. It now resembled nothing so much like as a fortress, high walls that had been constructed on the coastline, with huge weapons mounted atop them. Weapon emplacements were also visible on top of the buildings. Streets leading into the Colosseum were barricaded, with Order of Montanui agents on guard. Patrolmen of all kinds were visible, frantically building more defenses. What is going on here? Huki exploded. The Makuta had suffered serious defeats, but they are not yet vanquished, said Jomac. We all know we will need a final battle to destroy them, but what we want is to pick the spot. So we leaked the word through servants of stealth, and we had turned to the great furnace of various works to replicate the proto-seal, while eating a virus that would have killed Makuta Koljol. Well, you made Metro Nui a target, said Kongu in disbelief. It's already a target, said Jomac. We just need to make it a better prepared one. Where are the Turaga? Demanded Huki. The Turaga proved uncooperative, Jomac replied. They have been asked to remain in the Colosseum for the duration. And just what is it that you will be asking us to do? Said Kongu. Nothing, said Jomac. Nothing at all. Stay out of our way. Your interference may well get other Order agents killed, not to mention yourselves. With that, Jomac turned around to a cloud of crystal and flew it out of the open window. Huki watched her go, his anger building with every moment. And nobody picks a fight in my city, then tells me to stay out of it, the Toa of Stone growled. Nobody! The Makuta Miserex and the 6 Toa Haga then turned to see one of the figures emerging from the dimensional portal. They were ready for anything, except for perhaps what they saw. Toa Helrix emerged first, followed by Kitongu. The portal had begun to shrink down beside them, and suddenly withered again, and to admit 2 more ancient figures. The Haga recognized neither one, but it was obvious that Helrix did. Axon, what are you doing here? And what has happened to Butaka? Axon explained how rapidly how he and Butaka had tracked down the pool where the Makuta species were created, only to be attacked by it. Butaka had been changed somehow and insisted to come immediately, wherever here might be, and used his massive dimensional gates to make the journey. Then was it which opened the gate, which allowed them to go where they were. Wondered Hellrex. No, answered Butaka in a voice like thunder. There's another Olmec, and it has been misused, and worse, it may threaten us all. It is going to wait in line, said Toeruni. Listen, and we all came down here looking for Miserix on your instructions, and then we were told it was in full traps and a place of death. Well, so far I see no pterodactyls running through the good trap, and nobody has died. What's happening? A ball of energy shot out from the blank machinery nearby. It struck Butaka, shattering his mask into pieces. You had to ask, Bumanga grumbled to Iruni. My apologies for an abrupt greeting, said the voice of Pterodax. It was strongly soft and seemed to be coming from all around. But I couldn't have Butaka helping you leave prematurely. Now when will we have so much to discuss? Makuta, said Hellrex. I know what you're planning. You won't get away with it. You know, Pterodax repeated, amused. If I knew you would be fleeing in panic, Toa. No, you suspect that just Zaktan does, or perhaps he does more than that. A loud hum filled the room. A moment later, both Zaktan and the water tank which he dwelled in exploded. And I suppose now we will never know, said Pterodax. Now, what shall we talk about? The economy of stealth, the Achilles scores, or the efforts to turn Metro Nui into an armed camp? No, I know. But let's discuss the end of your universe as you have known it. The island of Destrel was in ruins, and the fortress of the Makuta had been proud to largely rumble. Vizon was the sole living and conscious occupant of the fortress. He departed using the mask of dimensional gates. Occupiers were already moving through the shattered rooms, looking for survivors to loot. Inside the subterranean chamber, a lone figure awoke. He knew his name, Takanuva. He remembered being kidnapped by the Universal Makuta. After that, he was a blank and woke up from a cracked canister. He kicked off the lid of a canister to pieces, stepped out by the chamber. All around him were duplicates of him, some dead, some trapped in suspended animation, and that answers one question. He had not been the only one taken. Something was nagging at him. Something else was not as it should be. What was it? He was certain that the armor had not been all black before, so that was one possibility. But was that the answer? No. No, it wasn't. And it was almost positive that the other thing had been different prior to the awakening. He was pretty sure he could have sworn, really, that he wanted to destroy this world before. But now, the Dark Takanuva just couldn't wait to get started. To be continued. Dwellers in Darkness, Chapter 9. The dark depths below the city of Metro Nui were a place of death, Toagaki had warned. She had been right, at least for the Paraka named Zaktan, who had just been killed by Makuta Pterodax. That was bad enough. Worse than that, it was impossible to tell where Pterodax was. His voice came from everywhere, but of his body there was no sign. A formidable amount of power was arraying against his chamber, and Toa Hellrex, leader of the Order of Motunui, Kitangu, a powerful Rahi beast, and 6 Toahaga, Makuta Miserix, Axons, Butaka, agents of the Order, all of them. Butaka was the strongest, glowing green as he was, floating several inches off the floor. Even as Kanohi mask shattered by Pterodax, he seemed frighteningly powerful. Show yourself, you treacherous vermin, and below Makuta Miserix. Let's settle this once and for all who rules the Brotherhood. And there came a sound of soft laughter from every corner of the room. The Brotherhood? There is no more Brotherhood, said Miserix in a very short time. The Makuta of Cardanui would be dead. Makuta Triax had died already, as have Spirea and the others. The Order of Montanui has been most helpful in that regard, and you seem unconcerned that your allies are perishing, said Helrix. Why? I have no allies, Terex replied, for I have no equals. A hum rose from the room, growling louder and louder until it drowned all thought. All that existed in the head spinning round drove even Axon to his knees. Only Butaka stood. He lashed out with a bolt of power from his sword, shouting, "Enough!" The energy struck the machinery from all around and stopped. Pterodax laughed, a mere sample from what to come. I know that all of you have forgotten, said Butaka. I know that you put millions of lives at risk with your foolish grab of power. This is not what you are meant to do. This is why you were created. And he is in the machines, Miseric's mother. Of course, so if we destroy the machines, the exiled Makuta hurl the bolt of gravitated power at the bent into the machinery where it struck the metal. The metal began to crumple and fold in on itself, and its gravity increased 100 times. But it was not Pterodax who struck back at him, it was Butaka. A blow from his sword sent Miserix sprawling. And no, you don't understand, shouted Makuta. That enlighten them, said Pterodax. Please. Butaka nodded. We stood in as close to the mind of Montanui as is possible to be. If we destroy this place, we destroy that mind and doom the universe. I don't understand, said Toanork. If this is Montanui's mind, where is his body? Butaka gestured broadly, indicating everything around him. It is our universe, Toa. We live inside the Great Spirit. But now Montanui has taken root in that body and controls all. And as soon as the Toa Nuva awakens his body, Pterodax will be unleashed to rain darkness on who live. How do we stop him, said Toa. I will show you how, Miserix roared. He reared back and hurled after the attack at the machinery and the chamber walls. The ceiling did untold damage to Axon, the Toa, and Toa Kitongu. He tried to stop him, only to be battled aside. And let us all die, Miserix said to you. Let the universe burn. I only want Pterodax dead. How one-dimensional of you, Pterodax replied. Before the horrified eyes of the party, Miserix's body began to change. It wavered and grew blurry. The colors seemed to run into each other. There was an explosive release of energy, blinding to its intensity. When the heroes could see him again, a picture of Miserix existed on the wall of the chamber, but he himself was gone. Or was he? He makes a very unique decoration, does he not? Said Pterodax. We will fight you, said Toanork. We will fight in some way. You were not the first Toa to do so, said Pterodax. No doubt you would find a way. Maybe you will win, I doubt it. A wave of mental energy struck the 6 Toa Haga, but did not seem to harm them. In fact, they seemed quite energized by it, even happy. They turned to see him headed out the back of the chamber, laughing at him, talking to the others at the best. Helrix watched him go, shocked. What did that do to them? Call it mercy, said Pterodax. In their minds, the battle is over, and the forces of good have won. And they remember seeing me defeated in their hands, and in the reality they will receive from now on, there is no Pterodax, no rule by Makuta, no Toa, Matorn and Peril. All they will see is peace and happiness from wherever they look. That's monstrous, said Axon, toying with their minds. Were you afraid to face them in battle? Pterodax ignored them. Unfortunately, I cannot do the same to Axon or Butaka or you. Ooh, Hendrix, your mind are too well shielded. Given time, I could break those shields. But why waste time and energy? As for Kitagu, I am on the verge of becoming a great spirit. I have no time for pets. It's you're tempering with fate, Butaka warned. You will be punished. But not by you, not today, Pterodax replied. Butaka winked on existence, followed by Axon, and then Kitagu. Only Hellrex remained. Do not worry, they are not dead, said Pterodax. Merely teleported to the southern edge of the universe, to the land so dangerous for even Makuta, I never dared to travel to them. And you will see them again, I am sure, if they survive. And what of me, said Hellrex. Will you banish me too? No, said Pterodax. You see, Montanui's great folly is that he had no one to share his thoughts with, no one whom he could communicate. He did not have a friend for want of better term. He will not make that mistake. You will remain here, Hellrex, where you and all your needs will be met. You will share your brilliant darkness as that is my mind, my plans, my dreams, my hopes. I will share them with you, for at least as long as your sanity remains intact. Like anyone else who would have been filled with the dread of Pterodax's words, but not Hellrex. She saw the opportunity. She would be alive. Her memories would be her own. She would be in the center of Pterodax's thoughts. Right then, she made a vow. She would not break. She would not crumble before the weight of his darkness, no matter what. She would defy him and somehow find a way to help the others the same. This isn't over, she said quietly. You know that, don't you, Pterodax? No matter what your power, no matter what you can do to us all, this isn't over. Of course it isn't, Pterodax answered. How boring would that be if it was? The end.